The year is 1898. 8 years prior, Count Dracula ventured to London with the intent to establish an empire of the undead. A small group of devout individuals successfully foiled his scheme and vanquished him in an epic showdown inside the crumbling walls of Castle Dracula. Now, almost a decade after those ominous events, the vampire lord has somehow been revived and is plotting his vengeance on an unprepared world. Will a group of dedicated hunters manage to locate and eliminate the nefarious Bloody Prince and purge the world of this horrific scourge once more? Tune in to discover the outcome as we play Fury of Dracula, the Solitaire variant.
Hello everyone, this is Keith, and thank you for spending time with me at the Solo Gamers Club. Tonight I'm going to demonstrate a solitaire variant that I've developed for Fury of Dracula by FFG. For this video, I'll be using the 2nd edition, but this system will likely work even better with the 3rd and 4th editions, as the map of those editions have grouped the play area into 7 regions, which will prove useful with this variant. Now I know what you're saying, this is a multiplayer game with hidden movement. It can't be done. I think you've gone too far this time, Keith, and you may be right. But for the short term, let's take a look at what I've developed. In this variant, we're going to take on the role of Dracula, and the hunter's actions will be directed by a series of bots. The game will use the rules as written, but due to the nature of Dracula's hidden movement system, we'll need to change our approach on how the game is played. We will direct the actions of Dracula as per the rules as written. When the hunters activate, their actions will be directed according to a mode or conditions that exist at that time. This simulates the amount of information that is available to the hunters at any given time. As in the standard game, the hunters will attempt to discern Dracula's location and bring him to battle and destroy him. So let's get started. For this variant, we're going to need 3 extra dice. We're going to need a D10, a D8, and a direction die. The direction die is nothing more than a D8, but it has the cardinal positions of the compass on there, and that's going to help us when we're determining how the hunters will be moving towards Dracula based on the mode of the game. Now I've created some custom counters that are going to help me with the playthrough. And the first set are going to be the mode counters. There's 3 different modes that the hunters can be in. The first one is search. Search mode is when the hunters only have a general idea of Dracula's location on the map, and they'll move based on that limited information. In search mode, at the start of the game, they will begin in search mode, and they're given a general region of where Dracula was last spotted. It can be one of 7 different regions. That's where these region tokens are going to come in. Now, if you have 3rd or 4th edition, you won't need these region tokens because the regions are displayed on the map. The 7 regions include Germany, France, Italy, the Balkans, Austria-Hungary, Britain, and Iberia. And Iberia is simply the Iberian Peninsula. That's a combination of Spain and Portugal. So that's our search mode, and that's how the game is going to begin. Another mode would be after one of Dracula's location cards is turned face up, they're going to move into track mode. And that's going to change how the hunters are going to operate as they actually know a part of Dracula's path. Another one is going to be conflict, and that's when they know precisely where Dracula is. And that can be based on deduction, or it can be based on the fact that that card is revealed. And that's how these are going to work in a very basic general manner. Now when they're in search mode, we're going to be using a table called the search table, and that's going to be a D8 roll, and that's going to determine the hunter's actions while they have that limited information. I'll bring the search table up on the screen, and you'll see that on a D4 or D8 roll of 1 to 4, their result is going to be to close on the target region. They're going to attempt to move into the region that Dracula was last located, and they'll attempt to pick up his trail. Another option is for the roll of 5 or 6, that'll be to resupply or rest. And instead of focusing on moving into Dracula's region, they're going to attempt to get some item and event cards, or possibly to rest if necessary. And then finally we have 7 to 8, and that's roll direction die. And what will happen there is when they're doing that, that's going to assume that they've kind of lost track of where Dracula might be. And we're going to use the direction die to help determine where they're going to move to. Now when the hunters move into track mode, the search table will not be used to direct their movement. Instead, a bot roll will be made. A bot roll is used whenever a random selection needs to be made. In this case, the results would be assigned to 2 or more potential spaces where Dracula may reside, and then that would be based upon the known track or the last known region that he was in. And the die result will determine the selection. So as an example, if we knew that Dracula's region was in Austria-Hungary, and one of his cards is flipped up that shows that one of his positions in his trail was in Austria-Hungary, we're going to select possible places that he could have moved based on the track, and then we would roll a die to randomly determine the selection of the movement for that character. So as an example, we'll say that the character was in Munich, and we know that on a part of the track, Dracula was in Budapest at one point. So knowing that, we know that Dracula moved 1 space from Budapest. He could be in Klausenburg, he could be in Szeged, or Vienna. Those would be the possible places. Or he could be in Zagreb. So knowing those, we would assign a value to those possible movement locations and then make a die roll. And that will determine where the hunter is going to move to in their attempt to find Dracula's location. Now, in order to make the game more compatible for solitaire play, we had to change some of the effects on the event cards and change their interpretation a bit. First one is vampiric influence. Instead of the text on the card, the hunter's model is placed in prone position and they lose their next turn. That'll make it easier to implement for solitaire play. Similarly, we have the mystic research. Instead of using the text on the card, Dracula must randomly discard 1 event card if possible. Then we have hired scouts. We're going to use the bot to determine the identity of the cities in question. And if they're in search mode, we'd select a random city in the region. If they're in track mode, we would select a random city based on the trail. And then finally, we have consecrated ground. We're going to use a random city roll to determine the identity of the cities in question. If we re-roll Galatz or Klausenburg, it would be re-rolled. And the cardinal rule of the solo gaming in this case is if the action for the bot does not make reasonable sense, don't do it. Use your power as the game master to overrule the selection and choose one more appropriate, as though you were playing as the hunters. Now I've created a random city table that we can use, and that would be a function of using a D6 and a D10 in order to get a random city. There's a total of 60 cities in the map. So we're going to roll the the D6 would determine the tens, and the D10 will determine the singles. So as an example, if we rolled a 3 and a 0, that would be 30, and that would be Leipzig in Germany. So that's how that's going to work. All the rules of the standard game will remain the same, with the exception of those event cards that we discussed that wouldn't be able to be implemented very easily in a solitaire format. But everything else is going to remain the same. Now, to play the solitaire variant, it's going to be set up according to the rules as written, with the following exceptions. Step 1, we're going to start by selecting the location for Dracula, and we're going to place the location card on his trail as we would normally. Now, I'm going to select a location without a rail line and with many or the most possible travel routes from that location. So I'm going to select Zagreb, and that's where Dracula is going to start the game. So we take the Zagreb location card and we're going to place that face down just as we would on Dracula's trail. Now, during the first turn, Dracula will follow the normal steps of his turn, but with the following exceptions. He's going to skip the timekeeping phase during the first turn, and he cannot use a power card or play an event token during the first turn. So what we're going to do is we're just going to place that Zagreb card on, in this case, the rightmost box of the Dracula's trail. And that's where Dracula is currently located right now. So as far as the hunters are concerned, all they know is that Dracula was last sighted somewhere within the boundaries of Austria-Hungary. So the search token is going to be up, and then they're in search mode. They don't have an exact location for him, but they have a region. So for the start of the game, they will be in search mode, and we'll place that token in the Black Sea area, and that's a good place to store it. Now we're going to randomly, using the city table that I designed, we're going to make a D10 and a D6 roll, and we're going to place the hunters in those random city locations. So we'll start out with Lord Godalming, and we'll see where he is going to start the campaign. Okay, we've rolled a 25. 25 is Genoa. So we're going to place Lord Godalming in Genoa. Now, the only exception to this city table is if we end up rolling Dracula's castle or the location where Dracula is, currently in Zagreb, we would re-roll that location. You can't start the game in the same space with Dracula. All right, we'll make a roll for Dr. Seward. And he's going to start in 13, and that is Cagliari. So we'll put him in Cagliari. Next will be Dr. Van Helsing. He's going to start in location 54, and that's in Toulouse. So he'll be in France. Finally, we have the beautiful Mina Harker. Let's see where she is going to be. She's going to be in 16, and that's going to be in Cologne. So she will start in Germany, in Cologne. And those are the starting locations for the hunters. I apologize for that. I had a phone call. Okay, so these are the starting locations of the hunters. And Dracula, his starting location is in Zagreb. And this will place the only information that the hunters have is that Dracula was last sighted somewhere within Austria-Hungary. So we're going to place the Austria-Hungary tile out, and that would be the information that would be available to the hunters. They are in search mode, meaning they don't have any part of his trail or anything. They just know that the last time he was sighted was in Austria-Hungary. So we will commence the game then using this starting criteria. So part of the setup is the normal setup rules. Each of the characters are going to receive their starting abilities that they have in combat. That's the punch, dodge, and escape. And Dracula is going to receive his cards and 5 event tokens. And his starting event tokens are going to be the Plague token, New Vampire, Wolves. He's going to have a minion, in this case a minion with a gun and a pistol and a knife, or I should say rifle and a knife. And then finally he has the Assassin token. So now Dracula is going to take his regular turn. Now in the first turn we're going to pass on the timekeeping phase, and Dracula will not be placing an event token when he moves during the first turn. So it'll just be a standard movement for Dracula. And I think Dracula is going to move from Zagreb into Szeged. I'll have him take the trail that's moving into that city. So we'll get out the location card for Szeged. So just as we do in a standard game, the card is going to be moved down the track, and Dracula's new location is going to be in Szeged. So we'll place that face down, and Dracula's position is there, and then his trail is starting. Now during the first turn again, he does not play a event token like he normally would. And that's going to conclude Dracula's turn. So now we'll undertake the hunter's turns, beginning with Lord Godalming. He's currently in Genoa. Now the information he has available to him is Dracula was last sighted within the boundaries of Austria-Hungary, and we know that Dracula, based on the trail, has made a land movement. So that's all the information that the hunters have at this point. So knowing that, we are currently in search mode. We don't have any knowledge of Dracula's exact position on the trail, so we're going to be using the search table. And then we're going to make a D8 roll for Lord Godalming, and that will kind of tell us what his operations will be. So we'll make the D8 roll and check the table. The result is a 6, and that's resupply or rest. So we're going to get, when we read resupply or rest on the definitions part of the table, it says, resupply or rest result will instruct the hunter to try to reach a large city, while still moving toward the general direction of the target region, with the intent to resupply and expand their inventory. If the hunter's health is 3 or less, they will take a rest action instead and attempt to coordinate their move with Dr. Seward with his special ability, Physician, and undertake the rest action. But in this case, Lord Godalming is in Genoa, and he's going to try to reach a large city that will allow him to resupply. So I think given that, those givens, he'll probably try to go to Milan. It's still going to offer him a path towards Austria-Hungary, and he'll be able to get a resupply there in a large city. So that's what he's going to do. In a large city, he has the option of getting an item and an event card, and he'll do both. First is the item card, and he gets Fast Horse. He can discard that to move 1 extra space along a road. And it says, discard this card at the start of your movement phase when moving by road to move 1 extra road. You do not encounter anything in the first space you enter or move through. All right, so we'll add that to his items that he has. Next, he drew a event card, and that ended up to be a hunter event. So we'll see what that is. This one is newspaper reports. Reveal the oldest location in Dracula's trail, unless it is Dracula's current location. Since those dark times, I have found myself reading the papers more carefully. Always I wondered, when would it start again? And that's a play immediately card, so that's what we're going to do. So, because of that newspaper report, we're going to reveal the oldest location on Dracula's trail. And that is going to be revealed to be Zagreb. So right now, the hunters know that Dracula started in Zagreb and he moved one space from that city. So this is going to switch from search mode to track mode. So we're no longer going to be using the location table anymore, and the hunters are going to use the information they have that Dracula was in Zagreb and he moved one space from there, and they're going to use that information to direct their movements. Now, the hunters don't have exact information on Dracula, but they do know that last turn he was in Zagreb. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to place the backside of the conflict token, which I made, and that's the image of Christopher Lee as Dracula. I'm a big fan of Christopher Lee, so I used his image, and we'll place him in Zagreb. And that's the latest information that the heroes have, is that he was there at one point. And then knowing that information, we know that he's moved one space. So he could have moved to Sarajevo, Szeged, Budapest, Vienna, or Munich. Those would be the possible current locations of Dracula, and they're going to use that information to move the other heroes will move using that information just as we would during a regular game. Now, for my purposes as the Dracula player, I'm going to be using these green cubes, and I'm going to chart Dracula's movements with those cubes. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to keep a separate track for myself, and one when I've got the hunter's hat on, when we're playing the hunters, to have the Dracula's trail just as it would be for a regular game. And that's why we're keeping those cards upside down. Even though we're playing Solitaire, we're going to use this just as we would during a regular game. So we know that his track is Zagreb, and we know that he moved to Szeged. And that'll keep track of where Dracula's actual trail is. And then when it's time to put on our hunter's hat for the game, we'll be looking at Dracula's trail and interpreting that just as we would during a regular game. All right, Dr. Seward is up next. Now, he's currently in Cagliari. That's in Sardinia. So he has no place he can move to, so he's going to have to take some, probably using a sea movement. So we'll have him move to sea from the port in Cagliari, and we know that he wants to try to get to Austria-Hungary, so we'll have him move into the Tyrrhenian Sea. That'll be his only action for the turn. He can't do anything else when he moves to sea. So that'll complete Dr. Seward's turn. We'll move on to Van Helsing. Van Helsing is currently in Toulouse. There's no rail lines there, so he'll be using road movement, and he's going to move in the most direct manner he can to try to get to that location in Zagreb to try to pick up Dracula's trail. So we'll have him move to Marseille. That would be a logical movement for him. And then once there, he's going to undertake a resupply, and we'll have him do that. I think he'll take both. He'll take a event card and an item card. All right, Dr. Seward's item card is a stake. You attempt to drive a wooden stake through your opponent's heart. All right, that is a pretty good weapon, and we'll give that to Dr. Seward. He also drew a event card, but unfortunately this is a Dracula card. So what happens with this, we'll play this just as we would for Dracula. And the card is revealed to be Time Runs Short. That's a keep card. Play this card at the start of your move. Move the day-night marker forward along the day-night track by one space. You cannot play this card during the small hours. The flavor text is, I heard the dull tolling of the clock tower, and my blood froze. Were we too late? But Van Helsing shouted at us, and once more we sped on into the growing twilight. Okay, so we're going to give that card to Dracula. We'll place that in his tableau, and he'll try to use these cards just as we're playing Dracula, so we're going to use the cards as we would if we were the Dracula player. All right. So that's going to complete Van Helsing's turn, and now we'll move on to Mina Harker. She's currently in Cologne, and she's going to try to get at best speed to try to get to pick up Dracula's trail. So I think she's going to try to attempt a rail movement. So we'll get the rail die out and see if she can make some progress using the trains. Here's her roll. She rolls a 2, so she can move 2 cities, and I think she'll do that. She's going to move to Frankfurt and then into Leipzig. That's a large city, so she's going to attempt to do a resupply there. Now Mina has the special ability Organized. Mina Harker gets 1 extra item or event card, her choice when resupplying. So we're going to have her take 2 item cards and 1 event. Let's try it. Her first item card is a rifle. You use your rifle against your opponent. Okay, that's a good card. Here's her second item. This one is a pistol. You get a +1 bonus to this combat roll. You use your pistol against your opponent. So those are good cards. We'll give those to Mina, placing those in her tableau. And now she drew also an event card, and this happened to be a hunter event. So let's see what we've got with this. This time it is a chartered carriage. Play this card when you attempt to catch a train. You do not roll the die. Instead, you automatically catch a fast express train. Dracula may play a false tip-off card to cancel this card. Traveling with Arthur is true elegance. Our Lord Godalming knows how to make the miles fly past. That's a keep card, so she is going to keep that card. And so that's going to bring the first turn to a close. And we'll move on now with another Dracula turn. Now, the first step of Dracula's turn is the timekeeping phase. So he's going to advance the track 1 space clockwise, and it's noon now. He's also going to use this time runs short card. And it says play this card at the start of your turn to move the day-night marker forward 1 space. So we're up to dusk already. Dracula is much stronger in the nighttime hours. So we're going to attempt to move the clock along and get him into his more powerful state. Dracula's current location is in Szeged. So we'll see where he's going to move to. And given this information, I think Dracula is going to move from Szeged. He's going to move to Klausenberg. So we'll update his track with that information. So Dracula's trail will move down as normal. And we're going to place the Klausenberg card face down in that track, and that is Dracula's current location. Now he can play an event token, and that's what he's going to do. So we're going to select one of our event tokens, and I think we're going to use the new vampire. There are 6 of those in the draw pool. We have 1 of them right now. And this token would depend on when the hunters would, at what time of day that vampire is discovered. But if we can end up getting that token to mature, it's going to raise Dracula's vampire track by 2. And that's what our whole mission in this game is. We want to get Dracula's vampire token up to 6. If we're playing a short game, it would be 4. But in this case, that if that token could mature, we would gain +2 on the vampire track. So I think we'll use that one. So I'm going to place that vampire token on the new location that we're at. Put it face down, and we want to preserve that Dracula's trail just as it would be if we were playing in a standard game. And we want to be able to put on the 2 hats, one for Dracula and one for the hunters. And we want to preserve this so that the information that we have would be just the same information we had if we were playing a multiplayer game. All right, so that's going to bring Dracula's turn to a close. And we will move on now to the hunter turns, beginning with Lord Godalming. All right, Lord Godalming is currently in Milan, and we know from the information we have, the newspaper reports that the Dark Prince has been spotted in Zagreb, so he wants to try to move to that location to pick up the trail. Now, we know that Dracula has moved twice since the reports put him in that location. So we have to kind of plan for that to try to enter the space that he's going to be in. So just as we would in a standard game, we would calculate 2 different spaces away from Zagreb. So he could be in Strasbourg, he could be in Nuremberg, he could be in Prague. So that kind of gives us an idea of where these characters would be moving to. Now, when given a choice, we're going to use a bot roll. So to use a bot roll, we're just going to assign values to a die, in this case a d6, and we'll see which direction that Lord Godalming believes that Dracula is moving to. So we would count out like two regions from his last known position. So we could have Nuremberg, that might be 1. It could be Prague, that would be 2. Budapest would be 3. Belgrade would be 4. Klausenburg, or 4 for Klausenburg, 5 for Belgrade, and Valona for 6. So we could make a roll like that, or we can use a d10 and get more options and try to, Dracula theoretically could be in Strasbourg right now. So I think probably the best thing we can do is we'll roll a direction die, and that would give us a little bit of a clue as to what direction he believes that Dracula moved in. So we'll make the direction die roll, and that's northwest. So he thinks that Dracula is moving to the northwest. So that would probably indicate Nuremberg, Strasbourg, or Zurich. And I think in this case, he would probably choose Zurich because that's a potential spot he could be, and they could actually, he could nab him there. So he'll move into Zurich. That's what he's going to choose. And basically that's how this solitaire variant would work. You're kind of massaging the situation, but using yet logic in selecting those locations. If you want to, you could actually roll a die and have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then move according to that criteria. But that's the way that this is going to work out. We have to make concessions because we're attempting to play a hidden multiplayer game, Solitaire. So this is kind of the way that I'm envisioning that this will work. So Lord Godalming enters Zurich, and he will attempt to resupply. And the only thing he can do in a small city is an event card draw. So we'll try it. His event is a hunter event, and it's revealed to be Sister Agatha. While this card is in play, Dracula must play 2 blood each time he plays Fangs or an escape card, Bat, Mist, or Man, whether he wins the combat or not. Jonathan, I have met an old friend of yours. When I told her our business, she did not laugh. So we'll place that in the ally portion of the board. So we're allowed to have 1 ally at a time, and we'll put that in the hunter's ally area, Sister Agatha. And I think for space considerations, I'm just going to put it that way, so we can read it and still be kind of out of the way. And then as the heroes move, we're going to consult our little reference map and make sure that the heroes haven't moved into any of the spaces that Dracula once occupied. All right, Dr. Seward is up next. He's currently traveling at sea in the Tyrrhenian Sea. So his options for movement would be to make landfall in Italy or to continue at sea and move into the Ionian Sea. So we'll make a roll for him and we'll see what he wants to do. And we'll have it a 1, 2, or 3. He'll make landfall in Italy because it is possible that Dracula had moved there. He could be in Venice at this point, 2 spaces from Zagreb. So we'll make a 1, 2, 3 for landing in Italy. 4, 5, or 6 will be to remain at sea. Here's the roll. Rolled a 4, so he's going to remain at sea and he'll travel into the Ionian Sea. That'll be all of his turn. Next up is Van Helsing. He's currently in Marseille, and we know from the track that Dracula could be in Venice. So I think it would make sense that he's going to probably move into Genoa or Milan, either one of those. We know that Genoa and Milan are not part of the track because Lord Godalming moved through there. So I think he'll move into Genoa. We'll have him do that. And then Van Helsing will attempt to resupply in that large city. I think he'll take one of each, an event and an item. And his item is the fast horse. Okay, that'll go along with his stake. That'll give him a total of 2 items. His event is newspaper reports. Reveal the oldest location in Dracula's trail, unless it's Dracula's current location. Play immediately. All right, let's do that. So we'll flip over the next card in Dracula's trail, and the hunters find out he went to Szeged. So we'll move Dracula's counter on the board to Szeged. So they know that Dracula is moving east. They can kind of discount any of these other possible locations that he may have moved to, central Germany or into Italy for that matter. So that is where we have Dracula right now. His last confirmed sighting is Szeged, and we know he's within 1 space of Szeged. And finally we have Mina Harker, and I think what she's going to do is she'll probably attempt a rail movement. So we'll get her to make a roll with the rail die and see how far she can move. And she's got an X, so that means she has to remain in Leipzig. She can't move. She can still interact with the city though. And in this case, Leipzig is a large city. Mina already has a rifle and a pistol, and she has a chartered carriage. Those are the cards she has. So I think what she'll do, she has that special ability organized. She can take an extra item or event card when resupplying. So she's going to take 2 events and 1 item. All right, her item is garlic. Dracula cannot escape from combat for 3 rounds. Okay, that's a pretty good card, and we'll give that to Mina. She also drew 2 events, and the first one was a hunter's event. That one is another chartered carriage. Okay, she already has one of those, so she'll have a second one. That's a keep card. We'll give that to her. And finally, her next event was a Dracula card, so we'll have to see what Dracula ends up with that event. And he ends up with wild horses. Play this card when a hunter has moved into Dracula's current location and is about to begin combat with Dracula. You may move the hunter into any city connected by a single road, and the combat does not take place. The hunter may then rest, resupply, or trade, even if he has already had an encounter this turn. So we'll give that to Dracula to keep. That's a keep card. And that's going to bring the hunter's phase to a close. So we'll start another Dracula turn, and we begin with the timekeeping phase, and it now advances from dusk to twilight. We're at the nighttime now, and Dracula becomes more powerful. All right, Dracula's current position is in Klausenburg, so I think what we're going to do is kind of continue in Austria-Hungary for a while and draw in the hunters, and then we can move to the port of Constanta and escape by sea. That might work out pretty well. If we can stay in that area long enough, the track might end up going theoretically into Greece, and then the hunters won't know whether it's Black Sea or Ionian Sea. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to have Dracula move to Belgrade, and we'll put a token in Belgrade and then get the card out for that. And so the Dracula's trail will slide down, and Dracula is going to move into Belgrade, and he's going to leave behind an encounter there. Let's see what kind of encounters he has. Well, Dracula's minions are more powerful when they're in Eastern Europe, so I think we're going to use this minion with a rifle and knife, and we're going to place him in Belgrade. So we'll place that minion in Belgrade, and then we get to draw another event. We have a 5 event hand limit. Our new event counter is a minion with a knife and pistol. And now we switch to the hunter's turn sequence. And I think what they'll do is we'll begin with Lord Godalming. He has a fast horse, and he might end up using that. Lord Godalming right now is in Zurich. So I think he is going to take a road movement into Munich, and knowing that Dracula is now within 2 spaces of Szeged, I think he's going to use the fast horse, and he's going to move to Vienna. some major city. So we've moved into Vienna. We find out that Dracula has not been in Vienna yet by looking at the track. So he is going to try a resupply. He has no events and no items at this point. So he's going to draw an item, and he ends up getting silver bullets. You do not need a pistol or rifle to use this card in combat. These bullets are sanctified to burn the undead and are fired from a special gun that comes with them. All right, so we'll give that to Lord Godalming. That's great. And then he drew an event, and this ends up to be a Dracula event, so we'll see what that is. So the Dracula event ends up to be Relentless Minion. Play this card immediately after a hunter has defeated or escaped from a minion encounter. The hunter immediately encounters another minion of the same type. The flavor text is, "God Almighty," cried Dr. Seward. "Another one. Is there no end to them?" All right, so he's going to keep that card, and that'll be pretty useful for Dracula. And that's going to end Lord Godalming's turn. We'll move on to Dr. Seward. He's at sea. He's in the Ionian Sea. All right, so Dr. Seward is at sea. His choices would be to remain at sea and travel into the Black Sea, travel into the Adriatic Sea, or to land in one of these ports in Greece. So I guess we'll have it 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Greek ports, and 5, 6 for the Black Sea. And that will be his choice of movement. Here's the roll. Rolled a 1, so he's going to move into the Adriatic Sea. And that's going to end his turn. Next up is Van Helsing. Van Helsing is going to use, I think, road movement. He also has fast horses, so I'm wondering if I think he probably will use that. So I think we'll have him move into Venice, and then he's going to use his fast horses and move into Munich, which is a large city. And he's going to resupply there. Van Helsing already has a stake, and now he's going to gain dogs. +4 to initiative. You are immune to rats, saboteur, and the thief. Turn this card face up either when you draw it or at the start of your movement phase. So he'll have the dogs item will be active for Van Helsing. That's pretty good. He also drew an event, and it is a hunter's event, and he gets excellent weather. Play this card when you embark to sea during your movement phase. You may make up to 4 sea moves instead of just a normal 1, including embarking, sailing, and disembarking. Flavor text is, "Well do I remember the Count's storms and fog. Clear days are gifts from heaven." So he'll keep that. We'll give that to Van Helsing. That is his first event card, and that'll complete his turn. We'll move on to Mina Harker. All right, Mina is in Leipzig. She has a pistol, rifle, and garlic. She has 2 chartered carriages, which is very interesting. And she's going to use the chartered carriage card. And that says, play this card when you attempt to catch a train. You do not roll the train die. Instead, you automatically catch a fast express train. Dracula can play the false tip-off card to cancel the card. So she's going to do that, and I think that will get her into a pretty good position. And I think we'll have her move, in this case, 2 rails, because we're going to be traveling over the Eastern European rails. She'll move into Prague, and that'll kind of get her close to Dracula's last known position. All right, so she is in Prague, and she's going to resupply in that large city. And she's able to take 1 item and 1 event. And then because of her organized ability, she can gain an extra one. So she's going to take 2 events and 1 item. All right, her item card is a knife. So we have to decide if we want to. She has full capacity right now. She has a pistol, rifle, and garlic. So I guess the knife would be handy, but I don't want to give up the garlic, so we'll just discard the knife, I think. And now she drew 2 events, and both of them are hunter events. The first one, is Money Trail. Play this card at the start of your turn. All C zones in Dracula's trail are revealed. It says, fortunately, the Count has accounts and finances which, although tangled and prodigious, are far from supernatural. So she'll keep that. That's her second event. And she has one more now that she drew, and that is Sense of Urgency. Play at the start of the movement phase. Lose health equal to the number of vampires that Dracula still needs to win. Then move to any location on the board. You may not play this card if doing so would reduce you to 0 health. All right. And so that is going to complete the Hunter's turn sequence. And I think I'm going to end the example of play here. I'm going to continue working on the rules and try to refine these a little bit. In the meantime, I will put up some higher definition scans of the rules that I have. I'll put those up on the screen roughly at this time in the video. And in case you want to try this out, you could do that. I'm going to wait to post this on BGG until I can get this refined. I'm also working on an alternate version where we will play as the heroes and Dracula will be controlled by an AI. And that's partially in the works already. I think I'll come back at a future time and I'll give you a full playthrough of this after I get the rules refined. So thank you so much for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club. I hope you enjoyed this preview of my Solitaire version of Fury of Dracula. I look forward to seeing you in our next video. And in the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and wishing everyone a pleasant evening. Good night.